Hello everybody and welcome back to Dr. Kashey's Processed Food Educational Series. And in this episode we are going to be talking about how food processing impacts the nutrient quality of foods. Because it is a common criticism that food processing removes or destroys important nutrients. And to be fully transparent, food processing absolutely destroys and depletes nutrients. However, it is almost never considered that lack of food processing is responsible for an even greater loss of nutritional value in important foods. Initial food processing, well, it does destroy some nutrients at the expense of preserving what is left for longer. Foods begin to die immediately upon harvesting. Food products begin to change as soon as they're pulled out of the ground or butchered, all the way up until you eat them. For instance, as soon as a fruit or vegetable is detached from the parent plant, it is more or less injured, for better or worse. It now has a gaping wound, right? And this wound exposes the plant to oxygen microbes, the plant's internal enzymes, and other signaling molecules that promote what we understand as the rotting process. As we all already know now, that precious organic kale you put in your shopping cart may have been harvested weeks earlier. An appreciative amount of its nutrition has been destroyed, and additionally, it may be multiple days or even multiple weeks before that fresh food is consumed. And who knows what nutrients are left, right? And I know it sounds scary when you put it that way, but it just goes to show how much of the practical impact it really has on human health. Not much. It makes for good headlines, though. When you consider the above and do a little bit of mental math, the nutrients that are destroyed through food processing, it may actually preserve more nutrients than fresh produce has before you end up eating it. Okay, and a lot of nutrient destruction occurs during commercial cooking or cooking at home. If the food is not cooked at all, then this version of the food may or may not digest as easy, in which case what nutrition is there may not be readily absorbed. Cooking food does destroy some nutrients, but it also makes the nutrients that are there more available for us to absorb, which I think is kind of cool. Now, cooking also makes food taste better. This also means you're more likely to eat more of it, which also means you're more likely to get the nutrients you need before you get sick of eating, right? Practicality matters. Some people have a small panic attack about destroying off the food's natural enzymes, some other equivalent, right? It's a commonly held belief that natural enzymes in food help aid in the digestion of that food. It turns out that the only digestion that helps with food is the food digesting itself. Wait, that came out funny. It turns out the only digestion that helps with is the food digesting itself, which we refer to as rotting. Good grief, folks. Thank you for your patience, okay? Now, enzymes are proteins. Proteins are nutritive to humans. This means that as soon as a plant's enzymes mix with our stomach acid and our own enzymes called proteases, which are little enzymes that break down proteins, we break them down and absorb the amino acids just as we would meat or any other protein source. And there are specific pharmaceutical preparations of enzymes that may aid in digestion of food with people that have a compromised gastrointestinal tract. These are very special considerations that have little to no impact on an already healthy person. These conditions include things like cystic fibrosis, pancreatic insufficiency, and sometimes people recovering from bariatric surgery, among a few other conditions, okay? It needs to be understood that vitamin and other nutrient profiles of produce, they change when they're stored. And all those enzymes I was talking about back there, they're going to go to work immediately. All the enzymes that are inside of the food, right? Especially if the temperature is warm. Enzymes will work faster when it's warmer, and they will end up destroying nutrients, and they destroy structural integrity, which changes the texture. And they also break down and digest the other molecules that make the food taste good. And I'd argue that naturally occurring enzymes in the food end up causing trouble, practically speaking, okay? Now, if the nutrition is the concern, then properly processing food as soon as possible, I think, is pretty darn important. If preserving nutrients is a priority, then processing of food as soon as possible after harvesting is a priority. Or eating, I suppose. There's very little practical need for this to occur, honestly, because the pathological nutrient deficiencies are so insanely rare, right? Basically, even if you eat foods that are a little bit older with their nutrients destroyed, the chances of you getting legitimately sick from having malnutrition is pretty darn low, right? It's best to consume foods just the way you like to consume them. You've made it this far, right? And so something tells me you're probably hitting your minimums, even if it's on accident. And something tells me building up anxiety and stressing about preserving the nutrients in your food will probably cause more harm. Okay, and since it's such a commonly held belief that food processing destroys nutrients, it's common for people to try and, preserve food on their own. They might create stocks or freeze food a certain way or can at home or dehydrate or do some other food processing methods that can be done at home. But not only are these varied processes done at the commercial level with just bigger, fancier machines, but hundreds of years and billions of dollars of research have also gone into improving these processes to make sure the foods retain more flavor, texture, and nutrients. It's safe to say, in my opinion, the Jolly Green Giant knows how to can food better than I ever will. Just saying, okay? Spinach, lettuce, and cabbage processing is fun to talk about in this regard too. The leaves are harvested from the farm, they're cooled down with water, and then they're trucked to the food processing plant. This happens, and then the leaves are washed. They're sorted to remove damaged and ugly leaves. Water is removed through a high-speed centrifugation process. Say that 5 times fast, geez. Okay, which is spinning around. Okay, and now comes the cool part. This is exactly why I prefer bagged produce to open air produce. After all those processing steps occur, the produce is put into a bag and the oxygen is removed and replaced with other inert gases. Think about it. Next time you go to a store looking at a bag of spinach and squeeze it, that gas in there, right, the pressure that builds up,
You think that's air you're breathing now?
it makes way more sense when you think of it that way, because that preserves the food for longer. You remove the oxygen from the equation, which keeps the food from rotting, at least partly, okay? The whole process is amazing to me. I was at the store the other day, as you do, right? And I was looking at varieties of pasta, thinking about how many steps it took to turn that durum into penne, right? It had to be ground up and sifted, ground up some more, right? Turning green in the flour. Now, grinding up the flour does destroy vitamins, remove some of the minerals, remove some of the protein, and remove a lot of the fiber. Many of these things, like the fiber and the micronutrients, we can add back later. Okay, sometimes the protein and some other types of fiber may not be added back because it changes the texture and the flavor of the final product too much, and then people don't like it, and then they don't buy it and it goes to waste, right? And so this is the case with turning any natural product into an edible, right? But when I look down the aisle, I swear half the damn options were gluten-free. And this is confusing to me, but I understand the marketing advantage, okay? And after surveying population, it appears that people are much more comfortable buying stuff that don't have things in them, as if removing parts of the food makes the food healthier. And ironically enough, when companies or public health organizations make food healthier, they do it by enriching processes, which is adding stuff back into it. But that's not nearly as exciting to people, I suppose. It's just interesting for me to think about. And right now, the public is okay with us removing things from food, but adding things back to food is considered negative, even if they're nutrients. It's crazy pants, people. Absolutely crazy pants. It makes it tough when everybody deals in absolutes. The truth is, biology is biology. Every single food came from a living thing at one point, and this means every single food is going to have an inherent trade-off with another food. Healthy and unhealthy, they're really just completely useless in these discussions, at least to me. Sure, if you can eliminate processed food from your diet, good luck. There are many people who are against processed foods, but unless you live walking distance from a farm that's fertile year-round, they offer little practical alternative for people who don't live there. Maximizing nutrients is useless and only serves to increase anxiety in people with a minimum understanding of fundamental biology. You only need what you need, nothing more. If you're still around, then you've probably got what you needed, and you can pick up some bulletproof vitality for insurance.